Welcome, everybody, for the newest episode of the latest thread. Today, we're going to do a mixed bag, which we haven't done in a while. We are going to address questions that you guys have asked on the different GAMO Facebook groups. And so hopefully we can, answer some of them and, be helpful. So Sharon's going to share the screen.
Here we go.
And, this one always makes me chuckle because I always think about Karen when I see that question. And even though this is by Marie, and she says, I know this question has been asked and I've searched the files and topics, but my tired brain can't find it. Batting, which way do the bumps go again? And we do hear that question a lot, whether it's on the, tour or the online tour, it comes up every time. And it does make a difference on some battings, how we load it. So because I referred to Karen, I'm gonna call on her to answer it in her ever so cute way.
Okay, well, I wasn't gonna lead with that, but yeah, the cute way is batting has pimples and dimples. And pimples are yucky, so we put them on the back, and dimples are cute, so we put them on the top. But you have to think about it. Your batting is flat, and when they needle punch it, the needles go like through the fabric. So you want your needle to follow that same hole. So the bumps should be on the back. Just think B&B, bumps on back.
And there's some that don't even have that.
Yeah.
You know how some of them have like a scrim, which most of them, I find that if I just go by the window and hold it, you can see where the scrim is, and that's the one you want down too.
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the brand of batting. But I've had it where, especially if it was dark backing fabric with the light batting where I loaded it wrong before I knew about all of that, and then the needle punches those little pimples, through the fabric, especially if it's maybe not high quality fabric, in other words, a looser weave. And that's when I remember one quilt specifically, it was a navy blue backing, and it had all these pimples, and you can spend hours pulling them out. So it was quite frustrating. Lesson learned.
The other way to think about it too is that sometimes sometimes it's difficult to tell. You can stare at it and be like, oh yeah, it's plain as day which side the innies and the outies are on. But sometimes you look at it and you can't really see it. So if you have your batting off of a big bolt, well, even if it's packaged, that first fold is just like the fabric on the bolt at the quilt shop. So the wrong side is on the inside and the good side's facing out. So when you open it up, that inside part should go down towards the backing, and the outside of it, which is the right side, is up. So just like it's folded on a big roll, it's the same way that fabric is folded and put onto a bolt. So.
And also, somebody told me once, depending what brand of batting it is, they were referring to a Warm and Natural specifically, where it's maybe not as easy to tell which side is which, that if you take a pin and, poke through it on either side, one side definitely pokes through much easier than the other. So you know which direction to lay it, because you want your needle, as it builds a stitch, to have the easiest way to go through. So I guess there's different methods of determining that based on what brand of batting you're using. All right, hopefully, Marie, that answered your question, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so Laura Gates asked a question. Hello, looking for some thread advice. I'm trying out Glide Micro Quilter 100 weight. Any advice on what to use in the bobbin, needle size, and any tension changes on the machine? Many thanks. So I think maybe Laura got her brands mixed up just slightly, because if she's referring to micro quilter, that's a Superior brand micro quilter. Glide makes a 60 weight, but not 100 weight. But aside from that, it's a good question, because a lot of us, I think here, use the micro quilter 100 for different things. And me personally, I still use Omni in the bobbin. When I use micro quilter on the top, my needle size, I don't change. I use an 18, all the time. And if I use my toe tension gauge, I still, set my bobbin accordingly. And therefore, for the micro quilter, I don't have to make any tension adjustments at all. But that's just me. Let's hear anybody else.
When I use the 100 weight, which I very seldom do on top, but if I do, I use the same in the bobbin. I just think, it just is easier if you can use the same top and bottom. Not that I always do, because I do also use the Glide 60 weight. That's my new favorite. And I use that on the top. And then I use micro quilter 100 weight in the bobbin with that, because I don't want to have to change my bobbin very much. And it lasts, you can get like sometimes a whole quilt out of one bobbin of that 100 weight, depending on what you're doing. But
Yeah, when I use 100 weight, I put it in the bobbin as well. I like those two together. It's almost like from the 100 weight to the 60 weight is too far of a jump for me. Like I'll mix 60 and 40, but I won't mix the 100 with the 60. So that's just how I do it.
Well,
I don't use it at all. I got nothing.
Well, and it's also important to point out, these are personal preferences.
oh yeah,
Based on what type of quilting we're doing. It's not that you couldn't run certain combinations because the machine wouldn't perform to the way we wanted. For me, I like to use the Omni in the bobbin in combination with the micro quilter, because I still like to see definition on the back of the quilt, and I won't get that with the micro quilter. So these are more personal preferences, whether we want a bobbin to last for the whole quilt or whether, so I think there's a difference to point that out, between a personal preference or because we had issues, where it affected patients.
And I think another big thing that you really do have to think about is what the quilt is for, because 100 weight is not very, what it's like. This is not Omni. This is not going to hold up as well. I'm not going to say it doesn't hold up, but if you're making a quilt for your grandson, your, whoever, grandchild that's going to drag it around, it's probably not the best choice because it just isn't as strong. But if you're going to do a bunch of stitch in the ditch, or you're going to do tons of backtracking and it, it's the perfect choice.
Yes.
So there's kind of that, you have to know what it's for, I think.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Next.
Okay, Marie asked, haven't seen this question. Do you prefer for the extra wide backing to be cut or torn? Personally, I prefer for it to be torn, but not every shop in the OKC area will do that. So what are your thoughts on that if you use wide backings?
I don't like it torn.
It always looks like this.
It looks like that when they cut it too.
But not as bad. When they tear it, it's
yeah,
it's always way worse. Because I've like, when I start rolling, I start here. And by the time it's done rolling, it's almost 12, 18 inches over. And I'm like,
Yeah.
unless you're giving me 3 extra feet of backing, this is not going to work.
Well, and I think a lot of times, I mean, because I know when I started quilting, everyone hears that, just tear it because it tears on the straight of grain. Okay, well, yeah, it will. It'll tear on the straight of the grain, but that fabric's all processed and then they roll it on that thing. So the straight of grain is all skewed.
Yes.
So you're going to rip it and it'll rip straight, but it's going to look like Karen said, like, I don't even what you call that shape.
Parallelogram.
Which isn't ideal in any way.
No.
So what I over the years found was that if you wash that fabric and then you tear it, it will be straight.
Yeah.
How you in your head envision tearing will work, because now you've taken out that kind of permanently, I don't even know what, like
the sizing and
Sizing,
the
yeah.
stabilizer chemicals that are in there, and just the pressure of, if
way
you've
it's
ever
on
seen a
there.
bolting machine, it flips it
Yeah.
and pulls it. So yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sounds like the purpose of having it torn for Marie would be to have that straight edge on that long side, right? I personally, yes, I agree that gives you a nice straight edge, but I mean, you can end up with a shortage in your backing. So I find, because you're saving a little bit of money on buying an extra wide back and you don't have to spend the time to cut and piece it, and with a 40 wide you would. So I just get a little extra. And that's the same thing that we tell our clients, is if it's an extra wide back, just give us extra. Like, instead of the 6 inches, we ask for like 10 inches. And then if somebody does want to square it up, they have room to do that, and you'll still have enough room to fit the quilt inside. So
Yeah. And sometimes I know I've bought it, sometimes, whoever cut it the last time didn't straighten out any edges or anything before they cut off that person's. And now you have this weird uneven, you can clearly see it's not right. And then they just chop it out a few more times and cut it again. And it's like, yeah, this is not going to be good.
yeah, and it's partly because it's folded twice on the bolt instead of just the once like the regular fabric. So it gets even more wonky.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think everybody should watch a bolting video, watching the fabric be bolted.
Mhm.
Well, and it's interesting too, I think. I mean, and you guys probably all have seen this, right? Because we teach classes. So we're buying like these bolts upon bolts of fabric to cut up. And you're going through, and like halfway through, you don't even know it's there because it's all folded. There's one of those Frankenstein seams where they started the new run, and it's like, what? I mean, I just got ripped off because I can't use that.
And it's never right where you're about to cut. It's like a good nod into what you're cutting. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. I guess we're ready to move on.
Well, that's a long one.
Goodness. Okay, this one is from Brenda. She is a brand new Elevate owner. And she says, when you get your free patterns with the Elevate, I have noticed that they are not already tagged Elevate like is mentioned and advised to do in one of the videos. So my question is, should I go and tag them like it says? And when I sync my patterns to my Elevate, only the ones that I have tagged like this will go to my Elevate. My reason for asking is Elevate only has room for 500 patterns. I noticed I have 533 in my pattern cloud account from the start, though. How is that possible? I know there are patterns that we get that I will never use. So if I don't tag those, they won't sync over to my tablet. That gives me the room I need for patterns that I've already bought elsewhere then, correct? I'm still not clear how we can have thousands in our pattern cloud, but in the Elevate only has room for 500. How do we use our excess amount? I'm clear as mud right now. And that is, even though this was lengthy, hopefully everybody could follow along. But that essentially for any Elevate user is a very important question that we definitely would want to address. Because it seems like Brenda was a little bit confused because the information was not as clear as maybe it could have been. So you get all those patterns, and no, we are all Elevate owners here, and they are not tagged ahead of time, right? And from my experience, they said you can actually, I think we were told you can have 1,000 patterns and you be fine. So my Elevate wouldn't download anymore because I had like 1,800 patterns on there, because I did not understand that I needed to sync them or tag them separately. I think I want to address, before somebody else addresses something else about that the main thing is that the Elevate is based on a functions as a tablet.
Mhm.
So the pattern cloud, you can have as many patterns on there because it's in the cloud. It has nothing to do with your Elevate, because it only downloads the patterns that you want it to. So that's why you can have a limited amount on the Elevate, because it's run off a tablet versus, any online storage, whether it's OneDrive or Dropbox, where you can have somewhat unlimited, storage capabilities. And that's what the difference is there. But maybe somebody else wants to address the select sync and how that works.
I don't use it. So my Elevate, I have a lot, way more than, I have close to 2,000 patterns on my Elevate, and I've not had any problem. The first thing I would say though, if there are things in there, because there were things on mine that, you get those patterns and I'm like, oh yes, I will never use this because I know I won't. I deleted those because there's no sense like having things that you absolutely know that you're never going to use. You might as well just delete them and not have to deal with them. But what I would say, if you have to selective sync where you only want to put up onto your Elevate what you want there, it would take a long time to sit and go through all those patterns and tag them. So I would probably, as I use them, tag them. Because you used it and you might use it again. And then that way, that one's there. I don't know.
But I want to say what Jody was saying is correct. But when you start deleting patterns, it's super important that you delete them, from the pattern cloud.
Well,
Replace.
And it sounds like almost like she hasn't even done this yet. So if you haven't synced, you would be able to delete them only in that one place, right? Yeah.
Once you've synced, because if you delete a pattern and then you sync, if you delete it off the cloud, okay, no, we'll say that. You delete it off the cloud and you sync and it's already on your Elevate's going to send it back to the cloud. They're going to share the two patterns. So if you're trying to truly delete things, you need to delete it on the cloud. Don't sync. Go to your Elevate, delete it from your Elevate, make sure that it's not in both places, and then sync, and then it won't add it back. But if you only delete it in one place, you're forever adding them back and forth.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up deleting all my almost 2,000 patterns, from the Elevate, and then the ones that I use on a regular basis or future ones, I do the tagging. I tag the pattern with the word Elevate. And I think Karen wanted to address the special sync also, right?
The selective sync, when you're in your pattern cloud account, you have to make sure that selective sync has a check mark next to it. So, and that way only the patterns that are tagged with Elevate will come into your Elevate.
Correct.
So it's a good habit to get into. If I buy a new pattern, as soon as I upload it to Pattern Cloud, or I buy it if I buy it from Pattern Cloud and I bring it into mine, I automatically put Elevate in the collection because I know I'm going to use it. Why would I buy it if I wasn't going to use it?
Well, come on now.
Okay.
That's another story altogether, Karen.
Not lying. How many times have I downloaded whenever the Elevate went, where's it? Darn it. Go back over to the laptop, mark it with Elevate, and then come back to the Elevate and download it again. Yeah. That's more like real life. But
Okay, that was a mouthful, but hopefully we untangled some of that for Brenda. Okay, so we answered those questions, hopefully, and now we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we are going to have our segment, Ideas for Your Quilt, and it's a good one this time. So we'll see you in a bit.
Today I get to show you Gamel's new professional bobbin winder. This little machine kicks out absolutely perfect bobbins every single time. It's quiet, it's simple to use, and it's built to last forever. You know, I've got to tell you, I've used all kinds of different bobbin winders over the years, and after using this one, I am completely in love with this machine. Obviously, one of the things you need for perfect stitches is a perfect bobbin, and this machine delivers one every single time. It only takes about 30 seconds start to finish, so you can wind several bobbins while staying at the machine, or since it stops by itself, you can walk away and come back when you need that bobbin. And now I'll just pull the finished bobbin off, drag the thread down through the thread cutter, and there we have one perfect bobbin. Check out how evenly this bobbin is wound, and the thread tension on this bobbin is perfectly consistent from the first stitch to the last.
So welcome back, everyone. Now we're ready for our segment, Ideas for Your Quilt. And today we have Kelly with us. And Kelly submitted a quilt, and we're going to share some drawings that we did for her quilt. But first, she's going to tell us a little bit more about herself and what she's been doing.
Good morning. I've been quilting for almost 20 years now. Just got into, within the last 6 years, into long arming, mid arming. So that's been a nice transition for me. And then a couple of years ago, I got a Vision 2.0. So been trying to figure out how to do different things and quilt things. And it's always hard to try and find different ideas, is what I find out anyway. So the quilt that I submitted was actually a demo project. This, because of the pandemic this past year, we were holding virtual guild meetings. So it's like, well, let's see how can we teach people what to do? So it was a no waste flying geese pattern that I did, block that I did. And then I just put the blocks together in a different format, offsetting them and just having them running different ways, and that just to add a little bit more visual interest, which then creates the problem is, how do I quilt this in a unique way to make the pattern stand out better, and just add more interest to it.
So what are some of the quilting techniques that you're comfortable with? What do you enjoy? Do you like ruler work? And
I do some ruler work. I just actually finished a double-sized quilt with ruler work. Took me a little bit extra time. But my big one that I really like is hand-guided.
okay.
Because, you just have more freedom that way. And more throat space, because I have a smaller throat space, so I can get more done without advancing the quilt.
Yeah. All right.
You have
So
an 18, Kelly?
Yes, I have an 18, yes.
Well, and you bring up a good point. Throat space does make a difference, but if you enjoy freehand, and especially if you quilt on a smaller scale, even if you have a larger throat space, you still tend to quilt just within a certain area. So, it really all depends on what scale of quilting you enjoy. So I know Jody loves the 18. We all have our preferences for different reasons when it comes to throat space.
I was started on an 18 as well, and you have to plan things a little bit differently if you're doing some bigger things, but there was a lot you could do on it still, and it was a great machine to start with. Really.
Yeah, and my big thing is when I was first looking at machines and that my arm length is really short. So at 18, 20 inches was about the maximum reach I had. So why go for a bigger machine if I'm not going into the computerized
Right.
version? So that's why I chose the 18.
Mhm.
Good
And
point.
it's so
Yes.
fun to use because it moves so easy.
Yes, it does.
Well, and see where I'm concerned, it moves too easily. It's not my favorite size because I feel I have absolutely no control because it runs away from me. I have 26 and it has more weight behind it, and that's how I feel I have better control. So these are all things that when you choose a machine, you don't really think about all that till you've already made the purchase. And yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but I think too, you just get used to what you have,
True.
So I started initially on a 26 and it was fine then. It didn't feel like I couldn't move it at all. But when I went to the 18, then I'm like, ooh, yeah. But then when I went to the 22, it's a difference. You wouldn't think it's that much difference, but it is a difference. And it's funny because I actually still quilt in the same space that I did on my 18. I don't know why.
What
That comfort zone.
like when we're at shows and I stitch on the 18, I'll lower the take up bar so there's more drag. So it feels
Drag,
more like
yeah.
a 26. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I think Sharon, we are ready to pull up the
Okay.
drawings.
I will do that.
And remember, Kelly, if you have any questions about the drawings as we go over them, don't hesitate to ask. So this one is the one I did, and yeah, I was challenged by that quilt. And the reason being, and I'm glad you said what you said earlier. You said you want to try to come up with a quilting design that emphasizes the piecing, with the flying geese. And the trouble I had when I first looked at it was that I realized the way it was laid out, the points of the geese were offset ever so slightly, but that made it more challenging for me anyhow, because I had to figure out how can I make what I want to do still work without emphasizing the fact that, they're offset. So I decided on doing this chevron quilting, essentially echoing, the geese themselves, even though the pattern looks like it's, that it's uniform and continuous, it's still, I don't know how to explain it. I'm not always good with words. In other words, you don't necessarily notice that the geese are not offset or that they are offset, by just echoing and adding the additional chevrons. And I wanted to extend that into the borders because I thought if I put something else in the border, then you kind of lose the effect, but that's just my thinking. And because the fabrics are so busy in the flying geese, I wanted really something nondescript, but not linear. So this is what I came up with. And you, of course, can, put whatever design you like or can do in there.
And what thread color would you envision it in?
People always ask that, like that's important. I don't know.
I know in the geese and that it's going to be something that, it's probably going to push them down a little bit. But on the
Well, I would
background,
probably try a light gray, actually, anything that doesn't,
so you just get the overall texture feel.
yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Is the background white or is it a light gray?
It's actually a light pink.
Oh,
Mm.
I didn't see that either.
I didn't either. I just know that I drew on mine with white and I was like, why can I see this? I thought the fabric was white.
No, it's actually
Well-
a light mottled pink. Yeah.
Well, but if you obviously like pink, seeing that you chose a model pink for the background, then a shade of pink would definitely be a good option because the pink, number one, takes on a lot of the color that you put it on, but it also blends because you have so many pink hues in your fabrics, So
Yeah. It was actually what was in my stash too.
I have a lot of that same stash.
Awesome. Okay, we ready to move on?
So this one's mine. And I would load it this way. I was thinking about it when I was drawing on it because I drew on it it was oriented the other way, but I would load it this way.
mhm.
And I just decided to frame out those sections and then put like, I don't know, a 1/2 inch echo inside. So it kind of goes down and like so it looks like that's behind the geese. You know what I mean? And then I just scribbled in there. So I would put some kind of a fill around the geese. And then I would do, like, I just put curls in the geese themselves because they're busy and you're not really going to see it. The background would already be fairly, with a fill back there. I don't think you need a whole lot of quilting in the geese. And then I like that the other one could look like it went over top of those other bars of geese.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of doing it.
And you could put whatever fill you like to do or whatever. And you wouldn't even need to do the straight lines if that seems like a lot of ruler stuff. You could put just another fill back there, I like the lines just because I kind of think it pronounces the movement that those are moving out from the center, I think.
Yeah. And, in the ends, yeah, you would use the ruler, but in the longer sections, you could actually just use your channel locks too.
Right.
Sure, you could. Or you could even just, like I said, you could fill that all around and it would really still make those sections that are outlined stand out because it would be different. It would be something different. Like you could even do something, I don't know, you could even put feathery stuff back in the whole background instead of the lines, really. It'd be still pretty.
Well, I still got to work on my feathers.
Or swirls, because the swirls would then kind of match the swirls that are in the geese. Anything. Yeah.
Well, but the lines really differentiate the areas, it's a nice.
Yeah, they do.
contrast. But I was just thinking, if you're doing that dense of a fill around the geese, then you probably have to do the straight lines, no wider than 1/2 inch in order for it to be balanced, don't you think? Or would you go wider, Jody?
No, I do
You
them
can
1/2 inch for sure.
Yeah.
You could even do, wavy lines, just a
Oh, yeah.
soft wave.
And actually, that's funny because that's what I did around the geese initially. And then I was like, I don't know. A lot of people don't like that look. I do.
Mhm.
What I like to mix the straight lines and then instead of stitching in the ditch, do the wavy line, where it hits the geese, you know what I mean? Goes on it and off it. I like that, but I know a lot of people aren't crazy about that. But
You know, it's a different way of doing it too.
Mhm.
Okay, ready to move on?
Yes.
Oh, that's my drawing and I like it better the other way. This way it looks like a big letter A to me.
Okay, wait.
There you go. Oh,
There?
There, yeah.
Okay, I'll zoom in just a little bit and then pan down just because your drawing is mostly at the top, if that's okay. Then it's bigger on the screen.
So I just made a big flying geese behind all the geese. And I did it straight lines, but you could even do like the back and forth stitch just to make them pop up. And then I just did a couple ghosted geese in the background, but not in both places, just on that one corner. Because I like when things don't balance perfectly. And then I just did a fill behind it and a similar thing that Jody did. That's what I do in most geese. It's just two little swirlies and a loop and then a straight line to travel because it goes super fast. And that was it. That's all I did.
Zoom back out because then that's then you can see that whole A. I guess I cut the bottom off.
Yeah, so if you were going to put it the other way, which I would still load it the other way, but when I saw it, I don't like it that way. I would probably tuck.
Let's look at it upside down.
I would tuck one of the corners underneath. So one would be over and one would be under in that big goose.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks like a letter A that way. So if I were going to hang it that way, I'd tuck one of those ends the opposite.
so I'm wondering if you're going with a distinct design like that and you drew it in a different color, would you then also quilt that in a,
I might
thread
do that.
color?
Like, when it's pink now, I might do that big goose in a darker pink.
Yeah,
So
or
not that it's,
purple or lilac.
yeah, not super high contrast, but definitely darker than what I'm using for the background.
Okay.
But that would definitely emphasize, that design and, ooh, not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it actually goes along really nicely with the theme of the project to
geese.
begin with the
Yep.
focus on the doing something with flying geese, and
Yep.
it ties it all together. Very clever.
Yep.
A lot of work in it too to get it.
I would say you want to mark that
Oh yeah.
before you even
Oh, yes.
load it for sure.
For sure.
Yep. Or you might lose the effect.
No guessing on that. Like, where was I?
Yeah. I could see losing my train of thought really quickly in
Oh
some of it.
yeah, any of us would.
Oh yeah, the phone rings, you come back and suddenly your horizontal lines are your vertical lines are now horizontal.
All I'd have to do is look away and then look back. The phone wouldn't have to ring. It would just be like a blink. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good to
Okay.
move on.
Yeah.
Okay, this is probably one of the simplest quilts that we've had featured on the show, but in my opinion, the most challenging for sure. I spent way too long trying to figure out what to put on this, and I scribbled everything out, and I probably had like 5 or 6 different versions that were too complex, too simple. And it was like what Ava said that threw me off was the way that the geese are offset a little bit,
Right.
but not evenly. So like this piece right here was narrow, and then the separation between here and here was wider. And I just had a really difficult brain time with that. So the lines just seemed the easiest way to deal with that background. And if you put them in opposite directions, then it doesn't matter if they don't line up with the section that's adjacent, because the shift, you won't even see the shift as much because they don't have to line up perfectly with them. Because you wanted the geese to be more of the focal point, I kept the quilting more simple in the geese so that they could rise up a little bit. And then the background, probably like the same width as Jody's lines, about 1/2 inch is what I would do. And you could do this design and the geese either freehand, or you could even do it with a ruler and come to a point at the top. It doesn't have to be curved. Because if you came to a point at the top, you could come in and then up, and then you could find a way to travel up and then come back down to complete them so that they're continuous. Doing it this way with an arc, like a freehand arc, you'd have to ditch your way up to the next geese where you could do that. So, which either way is fine. And then because there was that open space, I thought, let's put something kind of fun in there, but I did put a ghosted geese at the end of each of the center row. And yeah, I just threw some feathers in there. But if you're not there yet with feathers, you could make them, you know, funky feathers. You could change up the style of the feathers so they're not really as technical if you don't feel comfortable with that at this point. Or you could do something completely different. You could meander for, you know, just something really simple in there, and that still does keep the focus on the geese. And I liked drawing on it in this orientation because it was easier for me to visualize the whole thing, and I could blow my screen up bigger while I was drawing on it. But I also was envisioning it like an art piece hanging behind a couch or something, like a painting would. So it would be really kind of neat to showcase it like that on a wall instead of, you know, the typical orientation of holding it vertically. So that'd be kind of fun.
Now I have the hard decision of figuring out which one I like the best.
But you don't have to, though. You can take elements of each of them and
That's
make
true.
them match.
Yeah.
You do have to share with us when you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you have it quilted, please post a picture or pictures on the Facebook groups. You know, we love to see how you decided to go forward with it. You know, you like we were saying, you can just take little bits and pieces from every design, because essentially they're just mere suggestions to get you on a track, you know, and you want to make it your own. So
and that's often how, I mean, for me, I get inspiration from looking at other people's work, but just pulling out one little thing that I like and then combining it with maybe something else that I saw somewhere else that I liked. And that's how you can make your quilting kind of unique. And you know, just really have fun with, I like this, so why not quilt it, right?
Yeah, I do that anyway, but it's just, you know, the practice part. Really the practice part still for me.
Yeah. And Kelly, you did the quilting with, sorry. What did you say, Karen?
I just said they're all practice. This quilt's practice for the next one, and that one's practice for the next one.
They are. Yeah. Kelly attended a Quilting with Confidence class with Jody and I recently. And that's how we ended up having you come on the show with us, because we were talking about that in one of our trunk show sections. We were sharing quilts, and we thought, hey, so if any of you are out there and you want to share your quilt with us and you attended that conference, you're more than welcome to send us pictures.
Yeah, I think I was the only one who shared unquilted quilts too.
Yeah. I kicked myself when I started drawing on it, because I suggested to you to submit it so we could do it on the show. And then when I was drawing it, I was like, oh man, this one's hard. What have I done?
I didn't think that one was hard. I like that, but I like the asymmetricalness. Is that
well, I do too, but it's harder to find something, you know, that makes that not, you know, a hindrance when you're coming up with your quilting design. Our brains work so differently. You know, I like the not even look, but it still has to make sense when you put it together, you know, with the quilting design. And I wanted mine, when I was thinking about it, I wanted it so it could be stitched continuously, you know, that with not a lot of stopping or marking for that matter. So it was a little bit challenging. I agree with Sharon. So, but all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kelly, and have fun with your quilt. And again, don't forget to submit pictures once it's done. We'd love to see it.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's nice to see you again.
Bye.
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 Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. And we'll see you next time on the latest thread. Bye.
Bye.